Welcome to Taste Buds. I'm Debra Eckerling, goal strategist, writer, and foodie. And today I'm speaking with Hannah Sattler, owner of Hannah's Kitchen. Welcome, Hannah.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you and to chat food. As you are in the Midwest and I am from the Midwest. So I feel like we're instant friends, which is how every conversation should be, right?
For sure.
Uh, please share who you are and what is a Hannah's Kitchen.
Yeah, so we've been in business almost 10 years. We are a Jewish focused catering and food business. Our focus is the Jewish community, though we work with all kinds of people. Our main kitchen is kosher, but we really work to serve the whole community. And it's life cycle events, nonprofit events, corporate events. They just want a birthday cake, anything like that, as well as we have a cafe as well that we run inside the Jewish Community Center in Whitefish Bay here in the suburbs of Milwaukee as well.
That's awesome, and it is quite a niche. So, how did you become, like, the go-to in the Midwest for kosher food?
Before I started Hannah's Kitchen, I kind of fell into it. I started off it before I had children as I was investments working in a hedge fund actually. But I ended up running my synagogue kitchen first as a volunteer when they needed someone. I was a stay-at-home mom and I kind of had a niche for it. So they ended up hiring me as their kitchen manager, much to like I didn't really want to work. I was trying to not really work for real. And then started the business. When my life kind of went through some changes almost 10 years ago. Um, and it was mostly just a focused catering business. But when COVID hit and catering was kind of not happening, we had to be creative and pivot. So we started doing curbside pickup meals and anything we could just to serve the community and keep kind of relevant. I also felt like it was a time to show who I was. So I started doing like, I would do cooking classes online with my kids, from my house on Facebook Live. There was one where my daughter burned herself at the end because she grabbed a pan, and you see me and I almost edited it out, and I was like, "You know what? This is quarantine. This is what everyone's life is right like now. We'll just leave it." So I really was just trying to show who I was, and I grew and then ended up getting to be in this great space in the heart of the Jewish Community Center in Milwaukee, which is very different than a lot of larger communities, which the Jewish Federation owns a huge campus. And so we are on this big, all multiple nonprofit organizations on this campus, and we get to have our main kitchen and our cafe on the campus with everybody.
I love that. I also love that you left, like, corporate life for the food life. I've interviewed, I believe now 3 former attorneys who are now chefs, and it sounds like it kind of fell into your lap as, like, some of the best things in the world do, but you had to have that love of food to begin with. So, where did that come from?
I just think it's from my family. My grandfather and grandmother were both avid cooks. My grandfather was a huge Asian foodie, actually. They kept kosher, but he wanted to learn how to, though he didn't keep kosher out of the house, he learned how to adapt a lot of the Chinese stuff. And so I watched him doing that. He would make me things like weird snacks, like making like a 7-year-old after school snack was like sauteed mushrooms and soy sauce, and stuff like that, which you don't normally see. My grandma did more of the Jewish cooking, but he was a challah baker, so I just slowly learned from them. My mom's always been a baker and a cook. And then when I was home, I was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years with my 3 girls. I really looked at it as time to be creative in the kitchen and just kind of I need to be busy. So finding ways to be creative and learning new skills. And I've always been really organized. And I think that's a lot in the kitchen too, especially in the catering world. You really need to not just know food, but you need to know how to organize and delegate and do all that stuff as well.
I love this idea of being creative in the kitchen because I think if we learned anything from the pandemic is we had to get not boring, right? So, what recommendations do you have for people who want to tap into their kitchen creativity?
I think it's don't be scared. The first time you make something, it may not succeed, but you'll learn from it. Just like my kids' school, this whole thing fail first attempt in learning, meaning nothing's ever really a failure. It's just a lesson, and then you move on. So it's trying something new, see if it works, get creative. Substituting stuff, seeing what you have, and just kind of going from there. I mean, I've taken things I used to make my grandfather bouillabaisse that was kosher, which was always crazy, and things like that, and just trying to figure out how do you adapt things and, you know, just making things fun and different and interesting, and you roll with it, and as long as it tastes good, it doesn't have to be necessarily traditionally culinarily made the way you would do it in a school, but if it works and tastes good, that's all that matters sometimes.
And do you have like a great example of an epic fail that tasted wonderful?
I don't know if an epic fail. I do remember once when I was married making falafel, trying to do it from scratch, and I had made everything from scratch. I made the pita. I was like, I mean, I'd been spending all day, and I don't know if you've ever made falafel from scratch, but if you don't have the exact right dryness to wetness, it will just fall apart in the oil. And I was like a mess when my ex-husband got home because I'd done all this work and the falafel was everywhere and just falling apart in the oil. And he came up, he goes, "We got veggie burgers. We'll just fry those up." And it worked, but it was one of those things where, everything else was amazing, but that one thing I just couldn't get it to work that day. Now we make falafel from scratch in our cafe all the time, and it never has an issue, but it
Are there secrets or tips for enjoying kitchen time with your family?
I think it depends. I mean, I think sometimes it's about healthy like, I try to sometimes focus on how do we make something interesting and healthy. My youngest and I are right now working on our mom. Her name is Miriam, but she goes by Mimi, and we're making a mommy and Mimi cookbook on Canva together by trying to research like high protein, low carb options just to have better, healthier options for our bodies. So having girls, it's hard in today's world. We really focus on how we feel in our skin and all that. So working on finding things like that, and then finding things that it doesn't feel like it's like diet. She's a kid, like, that's not a good word for her, right? And so that's one way to do it. I also I think certain equipment's easier for kids to use. I actually, when my kids were young, now they're older, we use a food processor a lot. There's a lot of safety features in a food processor where you're not having to worry about chopping. And so, making we've done creative hummuses or things like that where you can throw everything in, they push the button. Is obviously you're still with them, but once it's closed, all that chopping gets done and you don't have to worry about their little fingers at that point.
I kind of feel like cooking is like the best kind of family project because the result is food.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you get to, and it also encourages time together, and also, even like I was saying, talking about health, like what you're putting in your body and thinking through what that looks like. My oldest, who is in college, and I made pasta from scratch, over winter break together, and that was something that culinarily I wouldn't have done with them when they were younger. It takes a lot of time, but she's older now, and it was funny to watch. She wanted to do it, and then she tends to get a little negative. And then it was funny because at first we're doing and she's getting grumpy, and I was like, "You just gotta push through." And then as we're rolling, it's just like, "This is really fun." So, she really got into it, and we ended up rolling this huge amount of pasta, and she was really excited to do, the whole process and see how it's all made, which was very fun with having an older kid doing it, not just a young kid.
Adventures in food can happen at any age, especially with, it sounds like, the right attitude.
Yeah, I just sometimes you all have to always have to know your kids, right? So
Do you remember your earliest food or cooking memory?
yeah, I mean, I definitely remember, everyone does the cookies with their mom or grandma. We would do that, getting ready. I mean, just walking in and smelling food from Shabbat was always a big memory for me. Helping my grandpa braid challah was always a big thing. He used to actually come to my preschool and do it with my friends. He was known as grandpa side of my entire preschool. So that's always been very memorable for me. Yeah. So, those I think definitely brain fell, and I've done that with my kids sometimes where when they were younger, I just give them each a little part of the dough if I was making it and let them kind of go to town. And it's funny, everyone would think I would be like, "No, you have to braid it this way." Sometimes I go, "Just do it. Play around, make," and one time one of them goes, "Look, it looks like a cookie." I'm like, "Okay." But letting them just kind of do their thing with the dough, we'll bake it and see what it looks like and letting them learn from that too.
It sounds also like playing with your food is a good thing.
Yeah, we actually just started something in our cafe. Anyone who comes in, not tonight because of what's coming up, but normally on Thursday nights and Friday we give out free holiday dough for any kids that if you purchase a meal for a kid with instructions on how to bake it. And trying to get pictures of the kids with them afterwards and just encourage parents to kind of have that interaction with their kids.
Nice. And I was gonna ask you where all the Jewishness came into influencing you, but I kind of feel like you answered that
Well, a
question.
lot in a lot of ways. Went to the Milwaukee Jewish Day School growing up, where my kids, one still is there and two have graduated. So I went there from 5 till 8th grade, as well as taught Hebrew school, Sunday school. Was very active in BBYO, and met my ex husband through BBYO. So it's always been a major part, and we grew up doing Shabbat dinner every Friday and all that. And then I enjoyed hosting. I love having people at my house and just having that time together.
You were destined, obviously, for this career. So, how did you end up in the financial industry?
Well, I'll tell you something funny, the destiny part. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but sometimes there are people you go and can take like a test on what you should major in when you're at some point in your life or what you should do with your life. And I started off as an engineering major in college. And 2 weeks in, I had to write a report on why I wanted to be an engineer. And I came home to my mom and I said, I'd be really good at it. I'm a very much math and science brain. I go, but I'd hate it. I'm like a really good Jewish mother. She goes, well, you need to know what you're doing with the rest of your life now. You need to go see this career counselor and you need to take a test to figure out what you're going to major in. And I actually didn't remember this for 20 plus years. And one day I was at home and out of nowhere, this memory popped in my head because I remembered the results and I thought they were really stupid and I put it away and I never looked at it again. It said religion and business. So sometimes I think your destiny doesn't, you just don't know where you'll end up. I end up in the financial industry because I'm a numbers cruncher. I'm good at that. And it just kind of happened that way.
That's hilarious. I'm a goal strategist. I help people figure out what they want and how to get it. Knowing the things that you love, I really believe that kind of draws you. And whether it's something you do full time or on the side until it becomes your full time life, you kind of got to go with it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, truthfully, with what I do, I end up connecting with people. I just had a call from a friend of mine yesterday. Her father passed away, and she literally is in tears. And she goes, "I was going to start planning, and then I go, I'm just going to call Hannah. I need a meal. Can you just do it?" And this is someone I'm closer with, but those calls happen in from people I barely know. And I'll see them years later and they go, I knew at the worst point in my life I needed to call you and you would handle. And those kinds of things mean so much to me, and so I always say we're there, in the good, but also the hard times, because as a community, that's what's important, and so it's not just about the fun things sometimes, it's also about those other moments as well.
It's such a blessing that they knew that they could call you and you would feed them.
Yeah, and I think we get comfort in food, right? But it is that go-to situation. And, I know probably a good amount of the people that I work with in a lot of stuff, but sometimes I don't. But I've been at home with my kids late at night where I'll get a text from someone where a meal went out for a meal of consolation after a burial, and I was sitting there. I never met them. I only talked to them on the phone. I wasn't even at the event. And I'll get a text going, after the hardest day of my life, this meal really made me feel better. Thank you. And those are things that it reminds me why I work 7 days a week and all the time.
Well, there's certainly nothing like food for any milestone, good or bad.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out, how do I transition into asking you for a recipe after such a serious part of the conversation? So I'm just going to say, do you have a recipe that you love that you want to share that we can put in? If you go to jewishjournal.com/podcast, you'll get the article in a recipe, because I like this to be an activity. I like my podcast to be a cooking
Yeah.
activity too.
Well, thinking of, I don't know about you, but I always think of memories with food, like smells, food, right? And so one of them, and I actually Passover was my grandma made this strawberry ice cream recipe, which it's funny because ice cream in its own isn't not necessarily kosher. there's no chametz in it, like, it's fine, but she would do it with egg whites, so it was parve, and you can have it after dinner, and it was always this thing that as a little girl, I just thought it was such an, luscious treat, and so that's one that I really love because and I like doing it I've done it with my kids at here and there because it just feels special and different and a little refreshing even though it is a treat at the end of a meal.
I love that. Do you have any final food for thought about how people can just love the whole process of cooking more?
I think sometimes people take too much on. Like when I first was married and I really was starting to host and cook, I always give this example. You don't try to make everything at once. I think sometimes people try to tackle it all. So in the beginning, if you got a box of rice that already is pre-seasoned and that's your easy part, good. You don't necessarily need to do every component from scratch. And even for me, I teach a class sometimes in the community how to make Shabbat dinner in less than 2 hours, for example. And where it is, taking that duck sauce, throwing down your chicken and you're done. Like you don't, not everything culinarily has to be complicated. You can make some easy meals and not stress out about everything you're doing and still have a really good meal that you're going to have that like quality time with your family. And so I think sometimes you have to like, you got to take, you can't win everywhere and not everything has to be that complicated. And I also think if you are hosting or doing a bigger thing, space it out. I always used to space out like soup and dessert can be done a day or two ahead of time. Certain things are better a day or, versus other things. And don't make so much work where it by the time you've got everyone at your home, you're feeling so stressed out, you don't even want to be at the meal anymore. That's not what it's for.
So planning
Hmm.
and having realistic cooking goals sounds like a
Yeah.
recipe for success.
Yeah, and I think just, if you are gonna do something creative, do it when you have time, take that time, relax about it, and, don't do it in a time where you're gonna be crunched. That's not the time to start getting creative. Sometimes it's okay to make something easy that everyone's just gonna love and find your go-to recipes like that. I think that's really important. We have a recipe that we use in our team all the time that I used to do at my house for cake. It's a banana pineapple chocolate chip cake, and we do it in our cafe, we do it in catering all the time because it was my go-to. I know I can make it, I know it's gonna turn out, it's not gonna take me long, I throw in the oven, and I'm done. And so now my pastry chefs actually really enjoy it because it is easy and people love it.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Hannah Sattler, for joining me. Where can people learn more about you in Hannah's Kitchen?
Yeah, we are on Instagram and on Facebook. On Instagram, it's Han_kit_MKE. We also have a cafe page, but it's harder to get to. And then we're also Hannah's Kitchen, Cafe B Data on Facebook, as well as Hannah's Kitchen. And then our website's www.hannahskitchenmke.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Hannah, for taking the time to chat food. Thank you for tuning in to Taste Buds with Deb. Don't miss an episode. You can subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, and or your favorite podcast platform. And if you go to jewishjournal.com/podcast, you'll get to read the article and get that wonderful strawberry ice cream recipe. And you can learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com. Until next time, bon appetit.